Ah, the medieval castle. Monument to human paranoia, overcompensation, and a deep-rooted fear of being stabbed in the night. Rising like a stone tumour from the muddy earth, its walls are thick, its gates heavy, and its draftiness unparalleled in European architecture. But behind every majestic fortress is a cadre of forgotten souls. Not kings, not knights, not cunning spy masters or damsels in distress. No, we're talking about the poor sods condemned to spend their lives standing on cold stone walls, holding splintery spears and praying nothing happens. Ever. Welcome to the life of the Castle Guard. Forget what you've seen in Hollywood. Castle Guards were not elite warriors brimming with valour and washboard abs. They were often old, maimed, stupid, drunk, or worse, willing. The job appealed to those with no prospects and fewer teeth. A job description roughly translated to, must stand still, get rained on, and die, quietly. Let's set the scene. It's dawn, which means the rooster's screaming, the latrines are steaming, and your shift started an hour ago. You're already late. Your feet squelch through mud and manure on the way to the barracks, a structure that somehow smells like damp wool, boiled onions, and regret. You throw on your uniform, which is essentially a potato sack dyed vaguely the colour of blood, grab your rusty halberd, and stumble up the icy spiral stairs to the battlements. Your job? Stand, occasionally pace, then stand some more. If you see something suspicious, which you won't, you're supposed to raise the alarm, which means shouting, loudly and repeatedly, until someone more important decides whether to care. It's a glamorous life, truly. The best part? The pay. On a good month, you'll earn enough to buy half a turnip. Maybe even a whole one if you don't mind worms. On a bad month, you'll get paid in leftover pottage and a kick to the shin for insolence. But hey, there are perks. You get to witness all 4 seasons of medieval misery from the best seat in the castle, the freezing wind-scoured parapet, and if you're lucky, the enemy will never come. Because if they do, guess who's getting hit with the first wave of flaming arrows? That's right, it's you, Meat Shield. Welcome to guard duty. You're underpaid, undertrained, and utterly expendable. Let's begin. Morning begins, as all medieval mornings do, with a shriek. Not from a rooster, but from a sergeant. He's a man forged entirely from scar tissue and resentment, and he's banging a pot like he's trying to kill it. Rise and shine, you bastion of martial excellence. You've got 8 hours of motionless standing to look forward to, punctuated by short bursts of being yelled at. Your first stop is the mess hall, where breakfast is being ladled out of a cauldron that predates the plague. Today's meal? Gruel. Yesterday's meal? Cold gruel. Tomorrow's meal? Don't ask. You gulp it down, trying not to taste it, and pretend that the crunchy bits are seasoning and not rat bones. Next, inspection. A humiliating parade of filth, where you're expected to look presentable, despite not having been issued clean clothing since the last eclipse. The captain walks past, sneering at your boots, your helmet, your face, anything within reach of his disappointment. He's convinced you're the reason the castle smells like fermented socks. He's not entirely wrong. Then it's time for patrol. Patrol is a generous term. You pace a portion of the outer wall like a depressed goat, peering into the fog for signs of danger. Spoiler, there are none. You imagine an invading army approaching just so something would finally happen. But alas, it's just the wind again, pushing open the privy door and reminding you of what happens when you give peasants cabbage and no plumbing. Midday arrives with all the joy of a tooth extraction. You're allowed a break, during which you sit on a damp bench and gnaw at something approximating bread. You listen to the other guards, a gallery of degenerates and cousins of cousins who are too stupid for farming, complain about lice, frostbite, and the unspeakable things they've seen in the moat. Afternoon patrol is even more demoralizing than morning. The sun is out just long enough to remind you that warmth exists for other people. A noblewoman passes through the courtyard, her gown bright and her nose permanently wrinkled. You smile politely. She looks at you like you just climbed out of a latrine, which, to be fair, you did. It's how you get water. Evening comes, eventually. You climb down from the wall, knees creaking like ancient siege engines. You're exhausted, but not in the satisfying way. It's the kind of exhaustion that settles in your soul. You collapse into your straw bed, trying not to think about what the straw is actually made of, and pray for an uneventful night. which of course it won't be, because it's your turn for night watch. But that's tomorrow's misery. For now, sleep, while the fleas feast. Night watch, where sleep goes to die, and toes go to blacken. You're shaken awake by a man with no concept of mercy, and told it's your turn on the parapets. Outside, the wind howls like the damned. Inside, your body pleads for warmth, rest, and a life choice, not based entirely on desperation. You pull on your cloak, the same one issued 3 years ago to someone who died of exposure, and trudge up the stairs to your post. The night air slaps your face like an angry nun. The torches are sputtering, the shadows are moving, or maybe you're hallucinating, hard to say. You haven't slept more than 4 hours in a row since the summer of 42. Night watch isn't glamorous. It's hours of squinting into darkness, hoping the enemy doesn't arrive, but also sort of hoping they do, just to break the monotony. Sometimes something rustles in the bushes. You grip your spear, you peer into the void. It's a cat or a ghost. You're too tired to care. If you fall asleep and you're caught, you'll be flogged. If you stay awake, you might just lose a finger to frostbite. It's a delicate balance of self-preservation and self-loathing. And if you see something genuinely alarming, like torches in the distance, you must sound the horn. But the horn hasn't worked properly since it was used as a chamber pot during last year's siege drills. You bang on the bell with a rock. Someone eventually hears, they investigate. It's a travelling merchant who took a wrong turn and was almost shot by 4 sleep-deprived guards with poor depth perception. You get no thanks, just more standing, until the sun rises, or the cold kills you, whichever comes first. In the castle guard, discipline is not a matter of professional pride. It's a matter of painful and public spectacle. Punishment is constant, creative, and almost entirely disconnected from justice. Late for shift, stocks for a day, drop your sword, lashings, insult a noble, lashings, stocks, and a week cleaning the Lord's chamber pot, a place where dreams go to drown. Accused of theft, doesn't matter if you're innocent, you're guilty of being available. Justice is swift and it doesn't wear a blindfold. It wears a smirk. Trial by ordeal is common. You might be asked to carry a hot iron or retrieve a stone from boiling water to prove your purity. If your wounds heal cleanly, you're innocent. If they fester, well, you were probably guilty, or God just dislikes you specifically. For more serious offences, there's the oubliette, a fancy French word for hole in the ground we forget you in. Guards have vanished into those pits, never to return. Some say they're still down there, haunting the stone, muttering about overcooked barley and the existential weight of servitude. But let's not be too bleak. Sometimes you're just fined a month's wages for sarcasm. That's assuming you were getting paid to begin with. As a guard, your life is full of interactions with your social betters, those towering figures of grace, intelligence, and hereditary inbreeding. The nobles, who prance about in embroidered slippers and complain about the chill in the corridor despite you standing outside in a gale wearing a tunic and a scowl. Their children, miniature tyrants in silk, often use guards for target practice, guess, or worse, conversation. Do you like killing people? They ask, wide-eyed. You say only metaphorically and get reported for insubordination. Then there are the priests, holy men, supposedly. Their job is to remind everyone that suffering is sacred, especially yours. They float through the halls like bloated spirits, quoting scripture while enjoying suspiciously well-fed faces. One once told you, "He who endures shall be exalted." You resisted the urge to exalt him off the battlements. They bless your spear before a skirmish, tell you to confess your sins, and then scurry back inside the chapel, where it's warm, dry, and well stocked with sacramental wine. You, meanwhile, are told to hold the front gate against armed invaders using only a dented shield, and your deeply compromised sense of hope. And then it happens. War. Actual war. Not drills. Not rumours. Real, honest-to-God banners on the horizon, drums in the distance and smoke curling over the hills. There's a flurry of activity. The captain is screaming, the sergeant is sweating. Everyone is pretending this was the plan. You're thrown a better spear, only slightly bent, and told to hold the walls. Hold them how? With your grit. The archers take their positions. The boiling oil is prepped. even though you're out of oil and using pig fat instead. Siege towers appear, crawling forward like wooden monstrosities. You wet yourself a little. It's fine. So does the lieutenant. The first assault is chaos. Arrows fill the sky. Men scream. Fire spreads. You jab blindly over the battlements, hoping to hit something that isn't on your side. You witness death. Sudden, stupid, and usually the result of someone stepping the wrong way at the wrong time. The enemy retreats. For now. You're left staring over the wall, trembling, soot-covered, and wondering how much worse it can get. Spoiler. Much. The Siege. The medieval version of a performance review. Except instead of a stern talking to and a promise of room for growth, you get dysentery, starvation, and the occasional flaming corpse catapulted over the wall. It starts slow. The enemy surrounds the castle, cuts off supply lines, and settles in to wait. You and your fellow guards are stuck inside, turning into increasingly foul-smelling cargo. Food rations are cut, then halved, then cut again. Eventually, you're trading boot leather and boiled rats like delicacies. A pigeon lands in the courtyard and causes a riot. 3 men are hospitalized. The pigeon escapes. Water is worse. The well has gone suspiciously green, and you're pretty sure the moat water is sentient now. You drink it anyway. What's a few hallucinations between friends? Morale plummets. The captain starts talking to his sword. The chaplain weeps silently in the chapel, then writes a cheerful sermon about the virtue of hunger. The youngest guards begin planning escape, until they realize the only thing outside is more death and less wall. The enemy, meanwhile, plays the long game, taunting messages on arrows. Musicians with the world's most annoying drums. One night they launch a severed pig's head with a note. Hope this helps. Surprisingly it does. It's dinner. You begin to question everything. Your life choices, the concept of honour, whether your childhood dog ever actually ran away, or was eaten by the village council. Sleep becomes a memory. Sanity, a luxury. At night, you dream of butter. Just butter. Then you wake up and gnaw on dried shoelaces. And then, the final assault. Siege engines creak to life. Battering rams slam against the gate like angry gods. Arrows blot out the sun, not poetically, just in a way that makes you wish you were somewhere, anywhere else. The enemy's climbing the walls, screaming like lunatics. You're screaming too, mostly internally. It's chaos. You're swinging wildly, praying your spear doesn't snap. Men fall. Some are pushed, some jump. The captain goes down heroically, or accidentally. Hard to tell. You hold the line, not out of bravery, but because there's nowhere to run and you've forgotten how to do anything else. Then suddenly, it's over. Maybe you win. Maybe they retreat. Maybe everyone just dies of exhaustion and mutual trauma. Either way, the fighting stops and you're left with silence. The kind of silence that feels like judgment. You collapse, you cry, or laugh, or just stare into space. A priest pats your shoulder and says, God is testing you. You consider testing him back. If the castle survives, congratulations. You now live in a ruin filled with corpses, broken furniture, and the echoing sobs of traumatized survivors. You're rewarded with half a loaf of bread, a muddy handshake, and a stirring speech about duty from a lord who spent the entire siege hiding behind a tapestry. Repairs begin immediately, which means you begin repairs, hauling stones, shoveling rubble, cleaning blood off the walls. No one thanks you. They're too busy looting the corpses. Your wounds fester. You develop a cough. The medic prescribes leeches, prayers, and not complaining. You comply. What choice do you have? You're not a hero. You're not honoured. You're not remembered. You're told you did your job. That's all. Sometimes bards come by. They sing of the brave knights and cunning lords. You, the guard who held the west wall with a pitchfork and a bladder full of fear, do not get a verse. But let's say, somehow, you survive. You don't die from infection, or get run through by a raider, or fall into the moat drunk and disappear forever. Let's say you endure. You get promoted, which means you now yell at younger guards instead of standing with them. You're given a slightly fancier helmet, a slightly larger portion of stew, and a new job title, Watch Commander. Sounds nice, right? It isn't. Now you're responsible for shift schedules, supply counts, and disciplining guards for all the same offences you committed for years, you are in essence the enemy. The younger guards hate you, the nobles ignore you, and the castle still stinks of rot, sweat, and futility. You spend your days doing paperwork that doesn't involve actual paper, because parchment is too expensive, so you write reports in chalk on a slab of wood that keeps getting used as firewood. You try to implement changes, better boots, improved training, maybe some kind of hygiene policy, and are laughed out of the Great Hall. So you stop caring, like your commander did, and his. You become another tired face, another muttered warning, another example of what happens when you don't die early. Eventually your body gives up before the enemy does. Your back is a gnarled knot of pain. Your knees sound like firewood snapping. Your sword arm, the one that once shook defiantly in the face of certain death, now shakes trying to lift a spoon. You are retired, which is medieval for too broken to stand still for 10 hours without soiling yourself. What does retirement mean for a castle guard? A generous pension? Ha! You're lucky if the steward remembers your name, let alone your injuries. You might be given a plot of land so barren that even weeds protest growing there, or a shack in a swamp that doubles as a leper colony. Some guards become beggars, some find religion not out of faith, but because monasteries serve food twice a day. Others just sit by the castle wall talking to birds and scratching ghost itches. You tell stories to children who think you're lying or drunk or both. If you're exceptionally lucky, and we mean miraculously lucky, a younger guard will help you walk. He'll ask what it was like back in the old days. You'll tell him. He'll laugh because it sounds ridiculous. And you'll nod because yes, it was ridiculous. Every minute of it. Your end comes not on the battlefield, not in glorious combat with a worthy foe. No, you probably die of a tooth infection, or from falling off a ladder while trying to fix a leak in the guard tower. Or quietly, in your sleep, if God is feeling generous and uncharacteristically distracted. There is no statue, no plaque, no weeping widow draped in black. Your funeral procession is 2 goats and a wheelbarrow. Maybe a priest mutters a prayer, one of the cheap ones, before your body's tipped into a hole and covered with dirt by a boy who's paid in onions. Your fellow guards grumble something vaguely respectful, then argue over who gets your boots. And just like that, you vanish from history. The scribes record nothing. The bard doesn't know your name. You become a footnote in the margin of some rotting ledger. Guard deceased. Replaced by cousin. That's it. That's the legacy. Centuries pass, the castle crumbles. The walls, once scrubbed with your blood and sweat, are now picturesque ruins featured on postcards and wedding proposals. Children play where you once killed. Tourists walk the battlements, marvelling at the noble history and asking where the gift shop is. Guides speak of heroic knights and brilliant generals, of kings who defended the realm, of noble causes. No one mentions the guards, the ones who stood in the rain, unpaid and unthanked, for decades. The ones who bled anonymously so someone richer could sleep soundly behind stone. Eventually someone writes a book, a dramatized history. The guard becomes a background character, faceless, disposable, probably played for comic relief. They get your uniform wrong, your weapon wrong, your entire existence wrong. You become a punchline, a stereotype, a prop in someone else's story, and still, somewhere in the cold stone memory of the walls, a shadow lingers. A faint, ghostly whisper of the thousands who stood there before, freezing, starving, forgotten. And yet you stood. You, anonymous and unloved. You, with cracked hands and crooked teeth. You, who kept the watch when no one else would. You bore the weight of the realm on your splintered shoulders, and no one noticed, except the wind, and the stone, and the stars. You were the silent spine of the castle, the invisible line between safety and slaughter, and though history has erased your name, the truth remains. Without you, everything would have burned. So here's to you, the miserable and miserable castle guard. God help us all.